But let's move on and recognize our final recipient. And I am joined by our wonderful managing attorney, Richard Marcantonio. And it is both an honor and thrill for us to present a Voices of Conscience Award to our next honoree, Lateefah Simon. Lateefah is a nationally recognized civil rights advocate who brings more than 20 years of experience advancing opportunities for women, for youth, communities of color, low-income families in the Bay Area. She has been named California Woman of the Year by the State Assembly. And get this, she's also the recipient of the MacArthur Genius Award. Today, as president of the Akonadi Foundation, her focus is crystal clear: to nurture racial justice movements in Oakland and the Bay Area with the larger goal of eliminating structural racism. That is at its core the mission of Akonadi, which is why Public Advocates is proud to be among its longstanding partners. In fact, it was the support from the Akonadi Foundation that first helped get our transportation justice work off the ground. This was over a decade ago. And today, because of the continued support of the Akonadi Foundation, of Public Advocates, and many of our community partners, we're able to make rights real for thousands of students attending Oakland Unified Public Schools. Now, last November, Lateefah inspired our region through her successful campaign for a seat on the BART Board of Directors. And it was based on a platform that put working families first. She told her own story about having to depend on BART after her husband passed away, and she found herself a single mother, as a legally blind person, relying on BART for the basic essentials of life. And since her election to the board, she has put that into practice, her values, by fighting for better service and affordability at BART. And most recently, she placed her entire might behind a proposal that will help protect undocumented BART riders from deportation by advocating that this agency become the first sanctuary transit district in the nation. This is the kind of leadership that we need and that we expect from our elected officials. Now, I have to tell you that her accolades are abundant, and so are her fans, Richard and myself included. But what's at the core of each of these accolades is that Lateefah is simply an extraordinary human being who has written the book on overcoming adversity through sheer force of will, intelligence, love, luck, and a boundless capacity for optimism. And of course, the generosity of the many people who believe in her. And Lateefah, we believe in you. Now, more than ever, we are looking to people, to leaders like you for inspiration and insight, and to help our communities be that elixir, as you've said, that can help counteract the assault that is underway on our civil and human rights. Please join us in honoring Lateefah Simon with his 2017 Voices of Conscience Award.
I mean, like, my God. And mostly it's actually because of the housing advocates here. Just give yourselves another round of applause. And I'm also furious because Guillermo, in his talk, he stole all my points. So I don't know what I'm supposed to do because I'm supposed to talk. So I'm going to give two 2-minute speeches, right? Because I'm an elected now, but I'm also the president of a very, very special foundation. So we are committed to supporting public advocates. So I want to talk really quick about both of those things. The housing advocates touched me, and that song touched me so much because as a senior in high school here in San Francisco, born and raised in the Fillmore, I came home one day unbeknownst to the fact that we were being evicted, and the sheriff's department actually had took everything out of our house. And all I had was a backpack and the things that they threw out of our beautiful Victorian that I had came home from the hospital from. And eviction and displacement, especially for folks who have no power, is not only destabilizing, it causes a deep trauma in the DNA. I still have nightmares. I grew up in the Fillmore and could never, even with this really good job that I have, I don't feel like I could ever return, not only because I can't afford, but what the state did to my family is incomprehensible. So as I come to you tonight, so humbled to be here, and also having served as a non-lawyer in the legal community as the executive director for a few years of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Robert Rubin is here, by the way, my mentor. Hey, Robert. I also come here, and the staff team that I represent oftentimes, but they do all the work from the Akonadi Foundation. They're here, staff members, can you stand up? The Akonadi Foundation this year provided a grant to public advocates for $75,000, and that wasn't enough. So a lot of folks didn't give, and let me tell you, every single lawyer that works at public advocates is extremely underpaid, and they can't afford to live in San Francisco. So we gotta figure out how, not only to stabilize the institution, but to stabilize the pro bono forces, but also the activist lawyers that have sacrificed so much to be voices for the people. That is our duty. That is our duty. The lawyers who work at public advocates have Ivy League educations and make 1/10 of what their colleagues make in big law. I'm just gonna say it because I can say it. So I have a couple more things to say in this moment, and I want to talk about being elected quickly, but we actually have this amazing opportunity now in this really insane administration to get extremely serious, like extremely serious. Like the law firms who are in this room, I ran the Lawyers Committee, so I remember in events we'd be like, okay, so this law firm can't sit at this table with this law firm because, no, let's get serious. We have deep injustice to fight. Organizations who are working against each other and foundations who are not thinking about the ecosystem of movement building. Let's get serious. And let's figure out who the enemy is. The enemy, and I want to be clear, is a white supremacist enemy who is very, very, very strategic, who has babies hiding under beds at night, afraid of deportation. There is an enemy in our politic that is crushing the republic and the promise of democracy, that is saying to all of us, what is emblematic on the Statue of Liberty is a lie. The things that you studied in your first year of law school, it doesn't matter anymore. The Constitution can be flushed down the toilet. Let's get serious and let's talk about sustaining institutions that are fighting for not only the democracy of this beautiful republic and this promise. We don't know what justice looks like. We can bake banana bread and there's a clear recipe, but we are all trying to figure out what justice feels like, looks like, tastes like. To do that, we actually have to be unapologetic with not only our spirits, but with our pockets. We keep saving for a rainy day, but I want to tell everyone in this room that it is storming and that a tsunami is right across the street. 60 minutes ago, we just attacked Syria. This is serious. I want to be clear, and I'm serious. I want to be clear that to create a movement, we actually have to support movement building. Why public advocates is so important. Its attorneys work face to face and shoulder to shoulder with people who have everything to lose, who put their bodies every single day just existing on the line to survive in the promise of what this democracy could in fact be. The real fighters The real fighters, I mean, we actually have the privilege of, as advocates and attorneys, is to work together as architects, but the real fighters are standing in line for healthcare and shelter right now. The real fighters are outside dying in their own waste. The real fighters right now are begging a station agent to get on BART, to go home, leaving an abusive situation. I could go on and on. Let's get serious about the fact that we've also been here before. Many of you, especially I like to say not our old folks, our tenured folks, you all understand, not only because of your background in the academy, you understand that when folks were fighting slavery in this country and pushing for emancipation, folks thought they were crazy. When we were fighting Jim Crow, folks thought that it was preposterous to think that desegregation was possible or that voting rights in this country could actually prevail. Those were ridiculous sentiments, a potentiality, the North Star. Very few folks believed in the young lawyers who sought to dig deep into the nation's cursed, very, very cursed brick and mortar, raced brick and mortar. But certain people supported that tenacity and that ridiculous and untamed breath of justice. It's what you all went to law school for, am I right? So public advocates, when you have a director that quotes the Zapatistas, I'm like, I am in the right place. So when we talk about getting serious, we must support institutions who will support people on the ground who will, in fact, stand clear to break unjust laws. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm going to say that again, folks who have studied jurisprudence of freedom. We will stand together moving forward to support people who break unjust laws that are racist and that go against the promise of democracy and freedom. And what that means is asking ourselves, I am a ninth-generation American, and I would have been in this room if I was granted the freedom and the luxury to say, would you harbor me? Would you harbor me? Would you harbor the family in Fruitvale seeking asylum? I would hope that you would, like organizations and institutions like Public Advocates in Covington and Berlin who said, we'll represent Black Lives Matter because we understand when Black Lives wins, everyone else wins. I want us to get serious in thinking about what it will take, not only to break unjust laws, but to fix what will be broken. Okay, so I have to take off my jacket now, only because now I have to enter a C4 conversation. Okay, that was my C3 conversation about how fabulous the Akonadi Foundation is, and for 20 years, we have been supporting organizations like Public Advocates, Quinn Delaney and Wayne Jordan. One family has given over $40 million to rip and tear apart the racist brick and mortar of policies that have plagued this country. So if they can do it, and again, hire a Black woman president, we can actually do it as well. So, okay, it's like I'm not the same person. C4 conversation. I ran for BART. And you know what? When I decided to actually run for that seat, 19 cities, 3 counties, over 1 million people that I had to reach, I was clear that I was going to be the only person of color on the BART board. But again, I was working for a woman, Quinn Delaney, who understood that plight. It's not a full-time job, but it's a lifelong love to be able to support institutions that are typically not held accountable. Folks didn't even know there was a BART board when I was knocking on doors. They didn't know that BART was a $2 billion budget. They didn't know that there were attacks on labor. Folks didn't know that disabled people didn't have access. Folks didn't understand the repercussions of having a police department that killed Black men in cold blood. So, and running for a position that was not fancy and not sexy, I'm redeemed in all the training that I've had as a youth organizer in this city, growing up in public housing. I'm redeemed being a high school organizer like many of the organizers that Public Advocates supports. I turned 40 and I have a 21-year-old daughter who will be a doctor hopefully in 4 years. She'll graduate college, and I have a little baby girl who's 5 who prays to her father every single night. who is in heaven. So I thank you all for understanding that regardless where we end up, the intersectionality of our existence is dependent on people like you who've decided, in whatever stage of life that you are, to dedicate yourselves to the sanctity of freedom and life in this country and abroad. I was supposed to talk for 10 minutes. I think it was like 7. I think I did really good. But there's a couple things that I leave you with, and there's wine in the back, and I want a glass and you want a glass, right? So if I leave you with anything tonight, not only when you walk outside, you see the people who are struggling, as you do every single day, with glimmers of hope, and our fight for them has to be harder than ever because they are forgotten, and we got the luxury to be voices for people who have been shut out and stomped on and incarcerated and jailed, deported and set aside. The stories that we all carry from either the cases or our own lived experiences that we've seen, the atrocities are just too many. But I have, as you do, so many stories, so many case studies of what is going to get us through. How we fought for 209, how we fought against 187, how we won marriage, how public advocates just won housing for people who just want to be, who just want to raise their babies, who just want to read stories and take baths at night, like basic, inalienable rights. I ask you to repeat after me. It is our duty to fight. It is our duty to fight. One more time. It is our duty to fight. It is our duty to fight. It is our duty to win. It is our duty to win. I thought like lawyers really knew how to give it. It is our duty to win. It is our duty to win. We, especially in this time, don't repeat that part. We must love one another. 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 We must support one another. We must support one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. We have nothing to lose but our chains. What is so important about that last piece, especially for folks who have committed their lives to representing folks who have had the voice beaten out of them, the yokes of racism, of injustice, they're tighter than ever. They're holding on, they're tighter than ever. The racism that birthed this country is loud and proud and now has a seat in a way that none of us could have ever anticipated. And they are relentless, but we are stronger and more mighty. We have nothing to lose but our chains. The family that is sitting in Contra Costa County right now in detention has nothing to lose but their chains. The young man right now at county jail on A Street who will be incarcerated for a nonviolent drug offense has nothing to lose but their chains, his chains. The family who is seeking shelter right now at a bullshit navigation center has nothing to lose but their chains, and they deserve us. They have the right to advocates with passion and privilege to fight alongside, because victory is ours. Thank you.